Chapter 10. Medzintchikov. The lodge to which Gavrila conducted me was called the New Lodge only from old habit, because it was built long ago in the time of the former owners. It was a pretty little wooden house, standing in the garden a few paces from the old house. It was surrounded on 3 sides by tall old lime trees, which touched the roof with their branches. All the 4 rooms of this little house were kept ready for visitors, and were not badly furnished. Going into the room assigned me, to which my portmanteau had been already taken, I saw on a little table before the bedstead a sheet of note-paper, covered with magnificent handwriting in various styles, framed in garlands and flourishes. The capital letters and the garlands were illuminated in various colors. The whole made a very pretty specimen of calligraphy. From the first words I read, I saw that it was a begging letter addressed to me, and that in it I was styled Enlightened Benefactor. It was headed The Plaints of Vodoplyasov. Though I tried with strained attention to make out something of what was written, my efforts were all in vain. It was the most inflated nonsense, written in a high-flown, flunky lingo. I could only surmise that Vodoplyasov was in trouble of some sort, was begging for my assistance, was building great hopes upon me, by reason of my enlightenment, and in conclusion begged me to interest myself on his behalf with my uncle, and to work upon him with my machinery, as he expressed it at the end of this epistle. I was still reading it when the door opened, and Medzintchikov walked in. "I hope you allow me to make your acquaintance," he said in a free and easy way, though with extreme courtesy, offering me his hand. "I could not say 2 words to you this afternoon, and yet from the first glance I felt a desire to know you better." I answered at once that I was delighted and so on, though I was, in fact, in an extremely bad temper. We sat down. "What have you got here?" he said, glancing at the sheet of paper which I was still holding in my hand. "Not the Plaints of Vodoplyasov. That's what it is. I was certain that Vodoplyasov was attacking you too. He presented me with just such a document, with the same complaints, and he has been expecting you a long time, and most likely got ready beforehand. You need not be surprised. There's a great deal that's queer here, and really there is plenty to laugh at." "Only to laugh at?" "Oh, well, surely not to cry over. If you like, I will give you Vodoplyasov's history, and I am certain that you will laugh." "I confess that I am not interested in Vodoplyasov just now," I answered with vexation. It was evident to me that Mr. Medzintchikov's friendliness and his polite conversation were all assumed by him with some object, and that he was simply trying to get something out of me. He had sat scowling and serious in the afternoon. Now he was good-humored, smiling, and ready to tell me long stories. It was evident from the first glance that the man was perfectly self-possessed, and he seemed to understand human nature. "That cursed Foma!" I said, banging my fist on the table with fury. "I am positive that he is at the bottom of every sort of mischief here, and mixed up in it all. Cursed brute!" "I think your anger is excessive," Medzintchikov observed. "My anger excessive?" I cried, instantly firing up. "I let myself go too far this afternoon, of course, and so gave everyone a right to blame me. I know very well that I plunged in and put my foot in it on every point, and I think there is no need to tell me that. I know, too, that that's not the way to behave in decent society, but how could I help letting myself go? Tell me that. Why, this is a madhouse, if you care to know, and in fact, I am simply going away, so there." "Do you smoke?" Medzintchikov asked calmly. "Yes." "Then you will probably allow me to smoke. They won't let me in there, and I am wretched without it. I agree," he went on as he lighted a cigarette, that all this is like a madhouse. But believe me, I do not venture to criticize you, just because in your place I should perhaps be 3 times as excited and violent as you. And why were you not violent if you really were angry too? I remember you very cool, on the contrary, and I confess I even thought it strange that you did not stand up for my poor uncle, who was ready to befriend all and everyone. You are right, he has befriended many people, but I consider it perfectly useless to stand up for him. In the first place, it would be useless and even derogatory for him in a way, and in the second, I should be kicked out tomorrow. And I tell you frankly, my circumstances are such that to be a guest here is a great advantage for me. But I do not make the slightest claim on your frankness in regard to your circumstances. I should, however, have liked to ask, since you have been here a month— Please do ask anything. I am at your service, Mtsenchikov answered, hurriedly moving up a chair. Well, explain this, for instance. Foma Fomitch has just refused 15,000 rubles which were in his hands. I saw it with my own eyes. What? Impossible! Cried Mtsenchikov. Tell me, please. I told him, saying nothing about Your Excellency. Mtsenchikov listened with greedy curiosity. He positively changed countenance when the 15,000 were mentioned. That's smart, he said when he heard my story. I really did not expect it of Foma. He did refuse the money, though. How do you explain that? Surely not by the nobility of his soul. He refused 15,000 to take 30 later. Though, do you know, he added after a moment's thought, I doubt whether Foma had any mercenary design in it. He is not a practical man. He is a sort of poet, too, in his own way. 15,000. He would have taken the money, do you see, but he couldn't resist the temptation to strike an attitude and give himself airs. I tell you he's a sentimental mush, and the sloppiest old sniveler and all that, with the most unbounded vanity. Mtsenchikov was positively roused to anger. It was evident that he was very much annoyed and even envious. I looked at him with curiosity. We may expect great changes, he added, musing. Now Yegor Ilyitch is ready to worship Foma. I shouldn't wonder if he does get married now that his heart is softened, he muttered through his teeth. So you think that this abominable, unnatural marriage with that crazy fool really will come off? Mtsenchikov looked at me searchingly. The scoundrels! I cried emphatically. There is a fairly sound idea at the back of it, though. They maintain that he ought to do something for his family. As though he hadn't done enough for them, I cried indignantly. And you talk of there being a sound idea in marrying a vulgar fool. Of course I agree with you that she is a fool. It's a good thing that you are so fond of your uncle. I sympathize with him myself, though he could round off his estate finely with her fortune. They have other reasons, though. They are afraid that Yegor Ilyitch may marry that governess. Do you remember an attractive girl? But is that likely to be true? I asked in agitation. It seems to me that it's spiteful gossip. Tell me, for goodness' sake, it interests me extremely. Oh, he is head over ears in love with her. Only, of course, he conceals it. He conceals it? You think that he is concealing it? And does she love him? It is very likely she does. It is all to her advantage to marry him, though. She is very poor. But what grounds have you for your supposition that they love each other? Oh, you know you can't help seeing it. Besides, I believe they meet in secret. They do say that she has illicit relations with him, in fact. Only please don't repeat that. I tell you as a secret. Is it possible to believe that? I cried. And you acknowledge that you believe it? Of course I do not fully believe it, I wasn't there, but it's very possible, though. Very possible? Think of my uncle's sense of honor, his noble character. I agree, but one may be carried away with the conviction that one is going to make it right with matrimony afterwards. People often are. But, I repeat, I don't insist on the absolute certainty of the facts, especially as they have blackened her character in all sorts of ways here. They even say that she had an intrigue with Vodoplyasov. There, you see, I cried, with Vodoplyasov. Why, as though it were possible. Isn't it revolting even to listen to such a thing? Surely you can't believe it. I tell you that I do not quite believe it, answered Mtsenchikov calmly. But it might happen. Anything may happen in this world. I was not there, and besides I consider it not my business. But as I see you take great interest in all this, I feel I ought to add that I really don't put much faith in the story about Vodoplyasov. It's all the invention of that Anna Nilovna, that Miss Perepelitsyn. It's she who has set those rumors going here out of envy, because she dreamed in the past of marrying Yegor Ilyitch herself. Yes, by Jove, on the ground that she is a major's daughter. Now she is disappointed and awfully furious. But I believe I have told you all about that business now, and I confess I greatly dislike gossip, especially as we are losing precious time. I have come to ask you a trifling favor, you see. A favor? Certainly, any way in which I can be of use to you. I understand, and indeed I hope to interest you, for I see you love your uncle and take great interest in his fate in the matrimonial line. But before I ask you that favor, I will ask you another, a preliminary one. What is that? I'll tell you. Perhaps you will consent to grant my chief request, and perhaps not. But in any case, before telling it you, I will humbly ask you to grant one great favor, to give me your word of honor as a nobleman and a gentleman, that all you hear from me shall remain a dead secret, and that you will not betray the secret in any case or for the sake of any person, and will not take advantage for your own benefit of the idea which I now find it necessary to communicate to you. Do you agree or not? It was a solemn introduction. I gave my assent. Well, I said. It is really a very simple matter, Mtsenchikov began. I want to elope with Tatiana Ivanovna and to marry her. In short, there is to be something in the Gretna Green style. Do you understand? I stared Mtsenchikov straight in the face, and for some time I could not utter a word. I confess I don't understand at all, I brought out at last. And what's more, I went on, expecting that I had to do with a sensible man, I did not in the least expect— Expecting you did not expect, interrupted Mtsenchikov, which may be translated that I and my project are stupid. That's so, isn't it? Oh, not at all, but— Oh, please, don't mind speaking plainly. Don't be uneasy. You will do me a great pleasure by plain speaking, in fact, for so we shall get nearer our object. I agree with you, though, that all this must seem somewhat strange at the first glance. But I venture to assure you that so far from being foolish, my project is extremely sensible, and if you will be so good as to listen to all the circumstances— Oh, certainly, I am listening eagerly. There is scarcely anything to tell, though. You see, I am in debt and haven't a farthing. I have, besides, a sister, a girl of 19, fatherless and motherless, living in a family and entirely without means, you know. For that I am partly to blame. We inherited a property of 40 serfs. Just at that time I was promoted to be a cornet. Well, at first, of course, I mortgaged, and then I squandered our money in other ways, too. I lived like a fool, set the fashion, gave myself airs, gambled, drank. It was idiotic, in fact, and I am ashamed to remember it. Now I have come to my senses and want to change the manner of life completely. But to do so, it is absolutely essential to have 100,000 rubles. As I shall never get anything in the service, since I am not qualified for anything and have scarcely any education, there are, of course, only two resources left to me: to steal or to marry a rich wife. I came here almost without boots to my feet. I walked, I could not drive. My sister gave me her last 3 rubles when I set off from Moscow. Here I saw Tatiana Ivanovna, and at once the idea dawned upon me. I immediately resolved to sacrifice myself and marry her. You will agree that all that is nothing but good sense. Besides, I am doing it more for my sister's sake, though of course for my own too. But allow me to ask, do you mean to make a formal proposal to Tatiana Ivanovna? God forbid! They would kick me out at once. But if I suggest an elopement, a runaway match, she will marry me at once. That's the whole point, that there should be something romantic and sensational about it. Of course it would all immediately end in legal matrimony. If only I can allure her away from here. But why are you so sure that she will elope with you? Oh, don't trouble about that. I am perfectly sure of that. The whole plan rests on the idea that Tatiana Ivanovna is ready to carry on an intrigue with anyone she meets, with anyone, in fact, to whom it occurs to respond to her. That is why I first asked you to give me your word of honor that you would not take advantage of the idea. You will understand, of course, that it would be positively wicked of me not to take advantage of such an opportunity, especially in my circumstances. So then she is quite mad. Oh, I beg your pardon, I added, catching myself up. Since you now have intentions— Please don't mind speaking out, as I have asked you already. You ask, is she quite mad? What shall I tell you? Of course she is not mad, since she is not yet in a madhouse. Besides, I really don't see anything particularly mad in this mania for love affairs. She is a respectable girl in spite of everything. You see, till a year ago she was horribly poor, and from her birth up has lived in bondage to the ladies who befriended her. Her heart is exceptionally susceptible. No one has asked her in marriage. Well, you understand, dreams, desires, hopes, the fervor of feelings which she has always had to conceal, perpetual agonies at the hands of those ladies who befriended her— all that, of course, might well drive a sensitive character to derangement. And all at once she comes in for a fortune. You'll allow that is enough to upset anyone. Well, now, of course, people make up to her and hang about her, and all her hopes have risen up. She told us this afternoon about a dandy in a white waistcoat. That's a fact which happened literally as she described. From that fact you can judge of the rest. With sighs, notes, verses, you can inveigle her at once. And if with all that you hint at a silken rope ladder, a Spanish serenade, and all that nonsense, you can do what you like with her. I have put it to the test, and at once obtained a secret interview. But meanwhile I have put it off till the right moment. But I must carry her off within 4 days. The evening before I shall begin to make tender speeches, to sigh. I can sing and play the guitar pretty well. At night there will be a meeting in the arbor, and at dawn the coach will be in readiness. I shall entice her away. We shall get into the coach and drive off. You understand that there is no risk about it whatever. She is of age, and what's more, completely her own mistress. And if once she ran away with me, she would, of course, be bound to me. I should take her to a poor but respectable family, 30 miles away, who would look after her, and not let anyone come near her till the wedding. And meanwhile I shan't lose time. We'll get married within 3 days. It can be done. Of course, first of all, money is needed, but I have reckoned that I shall not need more than 500 rubles for the whole business, and for that I rely on Yegor Ilyitch. He will give it, of course, without knowing what is up. Do you understand now? "I do," I answered, taking it all in fully. "But tell me, in what way can I be of use to you?" "Oh, in a great deal, I assure you, or I would not have asked you. I told you that I had in view a poor but very respectable family. You can help me both here and there, and as a witness. I must own that without your help I should be at a loss." "Another question. Why have you done me the honor to select me to receive your confidence, though you know nothing of me, since I have only been here a few hours?" "Your question," Mizintchikov answered with the most polite smile, "your question, I frankly confess, gives me great satisfaction, because it affords me an opportunity of expressing my special regard for you." "Oh, you do me too much honor." "No, you see, I have been studying you a little this afternoon. Admitting you are both hasty and, well, young, I tell you what I am thoroughly certain of. When you have given me your word that you will tell no one, you will certainly keep it. You are not Obnoskin, that's the first point. Secondly, you are honest and will not take advantage of my idea. For yourself, of course, I mean. Unless you would like to enter into a friendly compact with me. In that case, I will perhaps agree to yield to you my idea, that is, Tatiana Ivanovna, and be ready to help you zealously in the elopement, only on condition of receiving from you, a month after your marriage, 50,000 roubles, for which you would, of course, give me security beforehand in the shape of an IOU. "What?" I cried out. "So now you are offering her to me?" "Naturally, I can give it up to you if on reflection you wish it. I should, of course, be a loser, but the idea belongs to me, and you know one is paid for one's ideas. Thirdly and lastly, I asked you because I had no choice. And taking into consideration the position here, it was impossible to delay long, besides which it will soon be the fast of the Assumption, and they won't celebrate weddings. I hope you fully understand me now?" "Perfectly. And once more I feel bound to keep your secret quite sacred. But I cannot be your accomplice in the business, and I think it my duty to tell you so at once." "Why so?" "You ask why so?" I cried, giving the rein to my pent-up feelings at last. "Why, surely you must understand that such an act is positively dishonorable. Supposing you were quite correct in your calculations, reckoning on the lady's weakness of mind and unhappy mania, why, it's that very thing which ought to restrain you as an honorable man. You say yourself that she is worthy of respect in spite of being ridiculous, and you are taking advantage of her misfortune to rob her of 100,000. You will not, of course, be the real husband to her, carrying out your obligations. You will certainly leave her. It's so dishonorable that, excuse me, I can't even understand how you could bring yourself to ask me to assist you." "Oh, my goodness, how romantic!" cried Mizintchikov, looking at me with unfeigned surprise. "Though, indeed, it's not that it's romantic, but simply I believe that you don't understand the position. You say that it's dishonorable, and yet all the advantages are not on my side, but hers. Only consider. Of course, if one looks at it from your point of view, I dare say it will appear that you will be doing something most magnanimous in marrying Tatiana Ivanovna," I answered with a sarcastic smile. "Well, what else? Just so, it is something most magnanimous," cried Mizintchikov, growing hot in his turn. "Only consider. In the first place, I am sacrificing myself in consenting to be her husband. Is not that some sacrifice? In the second place, although she has certainly 100,000 in silver roubles, I shall only take 100,000 in paper, and I have sworn that I won't take another farthing from her all my life, though I could. That's some sacrifice again. Lastly, look into it more deeply. Could she anyway lead a peaceful life? For her to live in peace, one would have to take her money from her and put her in a madhouse, for one may expect any minute that some worthless fellow, some scheming rogue, Some adventurer will turn up with a mustache and an imperial, with a guitar and serenades. Someone in the style of Obnoskin who will inveigle her, marry her, and strip her completely, and then turn her out into the gutter. This, for instance, is a most respectable household, and yet they are only keeping her here because they are speculating on her fortune. From such risks she must be saved, rescued. Well, you see, as soon as she marries me, such risks are over. It will be my duty to see that no trouble comes near her. In the first place, I shall settle her at once in Moscow, in a poor but honorable family. Not the one I have spoken of to you, but another. My sister will be constantly with her. They will look after her and pay her every attention. She will have 250,000, possibly 300 in paper left. One can do well on that, you know. Every pleasure will be provided for her, all sorts of entertainments, balls, masquerades, and concerts. She may even dream of love affairs, only of course I shall look after that. She may dream as much as she likes, but not so in reality. Now, for instance, anyone can ill-treat her, but no one will be able to then. She will be my wife, she will be a Andreikovo, and I won't allow my name to be insulted. That alone is worth something, isn't it? Naturally, I am not going to live with her. She will live in Moscow, and I shall live somewhere in Petersburg. I admit that because I am doing things straightforwardly with you. But what if we do live apart? Look at her character and just consider, is she fit to be a wife and live with a husband? Is it possible to go on living with her continually? Why, she is the most light-headed creature in the world. She must have incessant change. She is capable next day of forgetting that she was married yesterday and made a lawful wife. Why, I should make her wretched in the end if I were to live with her and insist on her strictly performing her wifely duties. Naturally, I shall go and see her once a year or oftener, and not to get money, I assure you. I have told you that I am not going to take more than 100,000 in paper from her, and I shan't either. On the money side, I shall treat her in the most honorable way. If I come to see her for 2 or 3 days, my visit will actually be a pleasure to her and not a bore. I shall laugh with her, tell her stories, take her to a ball, make love to her, give her little souvenirs, sing songs to her, make her a present of a lapdog, have a romantic parting from her, and keep up an exchange of love letters. Why, she will be in ecstasies over such a romantic, devoted, and amusing husband. To my thinking, that is a rational way to proceed. That's how all husbands ought to behave. Husbands are only precious to their wives when they are absent, and following my system, I shall engage Tatiana Ivanovna's heart in the most honeyed way for the whole of her life. What more can she want? Tell me that. Why, it is paradise, not life. I listened in silence and with wonder. I realized that it was impossible to turn Mr. Andreikovo from his plan. He was fanatically persuaded of the rectitude and even the greatness of his project, and spoke of it with the enthusiasm of an inventor. But there was still one rather delicate question which it was essential to clear up. "Have you reflected," I said, "that she is almost betrothed to my uncle? It will be a great insult to him if you elope with her. You will be carrying her off almost on the eve of her wedding, and what's more, will borrow from him to carry out your exploit." "That is just where I have you," Andreikovo cried out with heat. "You needn't trouble, I foresaw your objection. But first and foremost, your uncle has not yet made her an offer. Consequently, there is no need for me to know that they are intending her for a match for him. Moreover, I beg you to note that I thought of this enterprise 3 weeks ago, when I knew nothing of their intentions, so I am perfectly justified from the moral point of view as regards them. And in fact, strictly speaking, it is rather he who is carrying off my betrothed than I his, whom, take note, I have already met in secret at night in the arbor. And lastly, allow me to ask, were not you yourself in a perfect frenzy at your uncle's being forced to marry Tatiana Ivanovna? And now you are all at once standing up for the marriage and talking of honor, of some insult to the family. Why, on the contrary, I am doing your uncle the greatest service. I am saving him. You ought to understand that. He looks on the match with aversion, and what's more, is in love with another young lady. Why, what sort of wife would Tatiana Ivanovna be to him? And she would be wretched with him, too, because, say what you like, she would then have to be restrained from throwing roses at young men. And you know, if I elope with her in the night, then no Madame la Générale, no Foma Fomitch will be able to do anything. To bring back a bride who has run away from a wedding would be too discreditable. Isn't that a service? Isn't it a benefit to Yegor Ilyitch? I must own this last argument had a great effect on me. But what if he makes her an offer tomorrow? I said. You see, it would be rather too late then. She will be formally betrothed to him. To be sure it will be, but that is just why we must work to prevent it. What am I asking you to help me for? It's hard for me alone, but the two of us together can arrange things and prevent Yegor Ilyitch from making a proposal. We must do everything we can to prevent it, even if it comes to thrashing Foma Fomitch, and so distracting the general attention from all thoughts of the match. Of course, that is only in the last extremity. I only give that for the sake of example. This is what I am relying on you for. One more last question. Have you told no one but me of your scheme? Medzintchikov scratched the back of his head and made a very wry face. I must confess that question is worse than the bitterest pill for me. That's just the trouble, that I have given away the idea. In fact, I have been the most awful fool. And to whom do you suppose? To Obnoskin. I can scarcely believe it myself. I don't know how it happened. He is always about the place. I did not know him so well, and when this inspiration dawned upon me, I was, of course, greatly excited. And as I realized even then that I should need someone to help me, I appealed to Obnoskin. It was unpardonable, unpardonable! Well, and what did Obnoskin say? He agreed with enthusiasm, but the next day early in the morning he disappeared. 3 days later he turned up again with his mamma. He doesn't say a word to me, and in fact avoids me as though he were afraid of me. I saw at once what was up. And his mother is a regular shark. She's been in tight places before now. I used to know her in the past. Of course he has told her all about it. I am waiting and keeping quiet. They are spying on me, and things are in rather a strained position. That's why I am in a hurry. What is it exactly you fear from them? They can't do a great deal, of course, but that they will do something nasty, that is certain. They will insist on having money for keeping quiet and helping, that I expect. Only I can't give them a great deal, and I am not going to. I have made up my mind about that. I can't give more than 3,000 paper roubles. Judge for yourself. 3,000 to them, 500 in silver for the wedding, for I must pay your uncle back in full. Then my old debts. Then at least something for my sister. Something at least. There won't be much left out of 100,000, will there? Why, it will be ruin. The Obnoskins have gone away, though. Gone away? I asked with curiosity. Just after tea, damn them. But they will turn up again tomorrow, you will see. Well, how is it to be, then? Do you agree? I must own, I answered, shrugging. I really don't know what to say. It's a delicate matter. Of course I will keep it all secret. I am not Obnoskin. But I think it's no use your building hopes on me. I see, said Medzintchikov, getting up from his chair, that you are not yet sick of Foma Fomitch and your grandmother, and though you do care for your kind and generous uncle, you have not yet sufficiently realized how he is being tormented. You are new to the place. But patience! You will be here tomorrow. Look about you, and by evening you'll consent. Your uncle is lost if you don't, do you understand? They will certainly force him to marry her. Don't forget that tomorrow he may perhaps make her an offer. It will be too late. We must settle things today. Really, I wish you every success, but as for helping you, I don't know in what way. We know, but let us wait till tomorrow, said Mazinchikov, smiling ironically. La nuit porte conseil. Goodbye for the present. I will come to you early in the morning, and you think things over. He turned and went out, whistling. I almost followed him out to get a breath of fresh air. The moon had not yet risen. It was a dark night, warm and stifling. The leaves on the trees did not stir. In spite of being terribly tired, I wanted to walk to distract my mind, collect my thoughts. But I had not gone above 10 paces when I suddenly heard my uncle's voice. He was mounting the steps of the lodge in company with someone, and speaking with great animation. I turned back and called to him. My uncle was with Vodopliasov. Breaking in. So the silent gentleman from the tea party, who seemed not to have an independent thought in his head, turns out to be the shrewdest, most calculating person on the estate. The backstory here concerning himself and Obdoskin, and the plot to elope with Tatiana Ivanovna, will go some way toward explaining some of the subtler observations made by the narrator at that party. While Mazinchikov's reading of the situation on the estate is incisive, I don't think all of his cynical suggestions are reliable. He's certainly right that Yegor Ilyich and Nastenka love each other, but it's hard to imagine either character pursuing an illicit physical union in the way he proposes. When Mazinchikov states that his elopement would be in the Gretna Green style, he is referring to a village in Scotland close to the English border, which was famous for being a preferred destination for a hasty marriage. When English law tightened restrictions on marriage without parental consent in the 18th century, lovesick youth would hop the border for a quick elopement. In the Orthodox Church, the Fast of the Assumption, to which Mazinchikov refers, starts at the beginning of August and lasts 2 weeks, culminating in the celebration of Mary's entry into heaven. Since weddings don't take place during that time, and since the current chapter takes place on the evening of July 16, we can understand the young man's haste. If you are familiar with Dostoevsky's other Siberian novella, Uncle's Dream, the scheme to marry a rich, feeble-minded person will sound familiar, as will the kinds of arguments that Mazinchikov offers to justify it. One significant difference between Mazinchikov in this work and Marya Alexandrovna, the schemer from Uncle's Dream, is that Marya Alexandrovna is consciously being duplicitous. Mazinchikov, by contrast, seems thoroughly convinced of the justice of his case. End of comments.